Non-stop Vikings talk. It's Purple Daily on Score North and ScoreNorth.com. Purple Daily, presented by Surly Brewing Company.
And welcome into Purple Access, presented by Surly Brewing Company and also our friends at TCL. Enjoy more with a TCL television. It's Zolgad, Declan Goff, executive producer, and my buddy Chip Scoggins, Star Tribune sports columnist, who was in Philadelphia for the debacle on Monday. A week ago, Chipper, everybody was excited. The Vikings had looked great against the Packers. I think we all thought that the Vikings would play a close game. I predicted they'd lose, but I thought it would be a very representable game. So as a guy who was there and took in the post-game festivities, what are your thoughts on what you saw a couple nights ago?
I'm still trying to figure out how a team can look that different from one week to the next. I thought they were not prepared. They looked very unprepared. The game plan defensively made no sense to me. And we saw the BAD Cousins return, the frantic, the chaotic Cousins that we've. I mean, it was just you said the right word, Judd. It was just a debacle. There was nothing redeeming about it except the punting.
Punter was good though.
So he was good. It was disappointing coming off the way they played, and yes, teams are going to have ebbs and flows. They're going to have good games and bad games, but to be that sloppy and that really, they look like they didn't have a plan of how they're going to deal with Hurts or deal with their pressure. It's disappointing. I don't think there's any other way to say it.
Yeah, I thought the interesting thing to me was, and we can certainly get to how individuals played and Kirk played. The interesting to me, though, is the starting point was they were really poorly coached.
Yeah.
They were like you're right. They didn't have a plan defensively. Look, if O'Connell and Kirk is going to work the way that we're told, O'Connell has to stop the bleeding when Kirk starts to implode. He didn't come close to doing that. Like that as much as I've been impressed by Kevin up until that game, that undid a lot until I see it rectified.
Well, remember, we've heard so much about him playing with a quiet mind.
Yep.
That wasn't quiet mind. That was Kirk panicking again. And some of the throws, it just felt like he was just throwing it to get rid of it and not really, I mean, the decision-making was not good. Obviously, the drops, I think he got frustrated with a lot of things. The Irv Smith drop. There was other drops. I thought the Eagles did a really good job after watching the Packers just basically play the soft coverage that the Vikings did. They challenged those receivers. How many? 11 pass breakups, Judd.
Yep.
11 pass breakups, and how many do we see on third down where he's trying to get it to Jefferson and either Slay or someone else bats it down? Is interesting. I heard before he came on here, I was listening to Kevin O'Connell's press conference, and apparently he sent the first one in where Jefferson's hand got pulled down, which okay.
Exactly.
I think Kirk just got frustrated. Then the pressure came when they fell behind. They didn't have to throw it a lot. They couldn't run the ball. He got panicky and was just trying to get rid of the ball. So if we thought it was going to be a light switch with having a guy he's comfortable with and that he likes and has empowered him, and then all of a sudden it was going to be the bad Kirk wasn't going to show up, well, it doesn't work that way. And
to that point, Kirk has warned us. Like since the spring, Kirk has warned us. This is very difficult. There's a lot going on here. It's basically not my fault if it goes wrong, and it did. But I mean, Kevin O'Connell is being paid very handsomely to solve this problem. And a lot of us said, are you sure? I might go in a different direction. And Kwesi and Kevin are like, no, we've got this. And so one, I don't want to hear excuses. I don't want to hear the protection broke down at times. And two is, if you told me that you can solve the problem, you have to consistently solve it. Now, that does not mean Kirk won't have off games and he won't have great games. But Monday night there was no difference between what we saw from that Kirk and the Zimmer Cousins combination. That's my issue.
And we've seen it too many times. And it's when things are going great and he's playing well, we understand, yes, he is a very good quarterback, but it's those occasions like Monday where kind of all hell breaks loose. and they have to, scramble, and maybe the protection's not good, and the receivers drop balls, and then he gets frantic, and then there were a couple of throws, Judd, where he's just like, what was he doing there? I mean, not even the interceptions. There was one where they came back and said, "This is not intentional grounding." We just threw it as far as he could to get rid of it.
Chipper, and I believe this was in Kirk's first year, if I'm not mistaken, 2018. It was the game in Seattle where he threw a backwards pass.
Yes. Yes.
Because he freaks out.
Yeah. Yeah. The backwards pass. This was
the backwards pass. And Thielen's basically saying, I am effing open on the sideline in that game. Not this time.
Let's get to Thielen. Wasn't much of a factor game one, and they won it, so you can't really say anything. They played well. Didn't get a target first half Monday, and he wound up with 7 targets, I think 4 catches in garbage time, basically. I'd be curious to see. It's 2 games, so we shouldn't completely overreact to it, but I do think. And Kevin got asked about this a little bit earlier today. Is like, you need to get Dalvin more involved early. You got to get Thielen. I mean, how are you going to make this all work? And he said, well, we only had 21 plays, so it's hard to get everybody involved. And I understand if you don't convert on 3rd down, you're not going to have a lot of plays. But
that's on you.
It's funny after
you're in charge of that.
Yeah, and so I think you still want JJ to be the priority, but is there an opportunity to get Thielen involved more and Dalvin too?
And everything that goes wrong on offense or right is on you. You call the plays. You set the game plan. Like, there's no bailout here. Now, defensively, I thought what Donatell did was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And the first half, to me, it was a tale of 2 halves. The first half, the defense was pathetic and couldn't do a damn thing and made, despite what players said, 0 adjustments. The second half was on Kirk, and we saw Chipper, here's my thing too with that game. As a football observer, so like we all like it if the Vikings can win because it helps business, it sells papers, it gets subscriptions, blah, blah, blah. But as a football observer, I love that game because it was what happens to road teams in tough environments. Adversity, drop passes, quarterback has some problems, defense has to make adjustments. And I thought it was very telltale that the Vikings almost did nothing to combat the problems, and the Irv Smith drop is unfortunate, but that's going to happen a lot. Yeah, unfortunately,
it shouldn't submarine the whole night, the whole operation. And it's funny, Judd. Going into that game, I wasn't sold on Jalen Hurts. I wasn't really understanding why everybody was picking the Eagles to be kind of a fashionable team in the NFC.
Mm-hmm.
They look legit. Now, did the way that Donatell defended them make him look better than he is? Because most NFL quarterbacks should be, if you have those kind of wide windows. I couldn't tell if Donatell's soft coverage was because he doesn't trust his corners or because he didn't think Hurts would pick him apart like that. Maybe it's both.
So I think you bring up a really interesting point. And it's been talked about by us a bit, and I don't know how much it's out there yet, but I think it's the fatal flaw here. And it's a problem on offense, but it's deadly on defense. The Vikings are playing a scheme in which you are willing to forfeit the run a bit. So like you give up yards. You're going to. It's not going to be the old days. But you want to take the top off the opponent. So like the deep touchdown cannot take place. But here's the fatal flaw. I think this defense is old and slow. And I don't think you can play what they want to play schematically with an old and slow defense.
Well, we say going into the year, the number one concern, I know some people said center guard. I put that number 2. To me, secondary was because you have some older guys there. You have some guys that are untested. I don't think your depth is very good. Your talent's probably not where you want it to be. And so it worked great in the opener when you can harass Rodgers with a bunch of pressure and your noise. But when you don't get there, and they didn't really, and you have a mobile quarterback where Jalen Hurts can escape, that's a double whammy. And so, Patrick Peterson did not play well early on in that game.
Correct.
And, Dantzler got pulled. Harrison Smith has a concussion.
And he did not play well before the concussion.
Yeah, and Bynum
He was
had
having a
bust.
tough game.
I think that was Bynum's bust, right? Not.
Yeah, that's what I think. Yeah. Because I think it's zone too deep in a shell. So I think he's got to pick that guy up.
Yeah, and so, but it was still staggering that after that first drive, and it was just like boom, 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 clinical, and just moved down, and these receivers were wide open. I mean, Judd, there's one time where DJ Wanham was covering Devontae Smith. It's like, come on.
That's that defense. Yes, it leads to some problems.
Judd, that's not going to work. And so, but I will say the Eagles have definitely upgraded at receiver. I mean, they got some guys there, and Hurts is better than I thought. But I do think just the entire way they defended it probably played into making him look better than he has.
I think you are going to have to make some personnel changes and certainly scheme changes before you travel to Miami to play the Dolphins. They will track meet your ass something fierce. So you can't do that
in there. I mean, what do you do though? I mean, that team has just.
I think Hicks. So Kendricks and Hicks to me are slow. Kendricks, God bless him, he was great, and I think against the right teams, he's still good. Hicks to me probably needs to be replaced, and this is where it's going to take some guts.
With Asamoah.
Yeah, not because Asamoah is going to be perfect. I got to have more speed, and Cine potentially too. I got to have more speed.
Yeah, I mean, Hicks was, he made a lot of tackles in the opener. I didn't go back and see how he did in coverage. Yeah, I mean, linebackers are going to make tackles.
Right.
But if you're getting a lot of these teams that have speedy wide receivers, you may have to go to a different type of either how you're attacking them or personnel. And again, that soft coverage, the shell, is that because does Donatel not trust his personnel?
I think it's partially how that's supposed. So it's the Fangio defense, right?
Don't get Vic Fangio.
Yes. So I think what he's doing is, and you're probably partially right, but I think what he's doing is he's playing the defense as constituted by the rules. But the problem is basically Philly looked at one game and said, oh, we can exploit X, Y, and Z. And they did. And you know what, Chipper, too? And this is a test of O'Connell. On both sides of the ball, we both know your initial punch often works perfect, right?
Yeah.
But these guys then adjust to you. And now the question is how, and by the way, you should be expecting the adjustments. That's the other tricky thing here. And the fact that the Vikings basically came out and said, oh, we can run this again, I was really disappointed and surprised.
Well, and that's the thing. O'Connell, everything about the operation was a great mystery last week. Well,
correct.
I don't know. They have the total book on you, but they have some chapters and some pages now. They have evidence. And so, teams are going to, it's just like Philadelphia defensively. I mean, look, they challenged Jefferson. They challenged those receivers. Look, they were up in them. They had pass breakups. They weren't just going to sit back and let Jefferson run free through their zone defense like the Packers did.
Right.
They said, you know what? We're putting Darius Slay on him. we got a good quarter. And you wonder if the Packers won't come back and do that same thing the next time with
Jair.
With Jair. But it was just the overarching thing, Judge. Just the lack of adjustments and just it felt like they played on their heels the whole time, and the Eagles just dictated everything, and there was no in-game response to it. I mean, It was just that to me was the most, I don't know if alarming is the right word, but it's just you didn't feel like they ever had any countermeasures to stop what was happening.
Yeah. And defensively, that really surprised me because like you saw the first two quarters provided a blueprint of, oh my God, something has to change here. And I'm sorry, but benching Cam Dantzler ain't the answer. Yeah.
Well, I mean, they'll come back and say, well, they didn't, they didn't give up points in the second half, but how much was that to Philadelphia? I don't know if they had their foot on the gas the whole time. And because of the way Cousins was playing, they probably felt like he was going to just keep throwing them the ball. I mean, and here, this is the thing. Now, what's the response, Judd?
Right.
we've seen one side of it. Now you've seen this. What's going to be the response Sunday against the Lions team that won, but it's still the Lions. That's what this year is about. Seeing how this team responds to Kevin O'Connell, and we said this is all, or we didn't say, they said this is all a Mike Zimmer thing. This is all Mike Zimmer's issues. So they're going to find out. It's like, is there personnel not? The personnel part of the reason too,
Yep. Well, you can't have, the problem is, again, I don't think there's room with this crew now for Kirk to have that game. Like, Kirk can have off nights, but he can't look that flustered. Yeah. Otherwise, what's changed?
Well,
because Kirk had good games with Mike. Like, it's not like he didn't have good games. We don't need Kevin when things are going well. We need Kevin when it's not going well to calm Kirk and, to your words, quiet mind him. If he can't, I guess my question is this with Kirk: what's the point?
Well, that was the thing about that night, is like, it's one thing to have an off game or just a mediocre game or whatever. It's like, that looked so panicky. And just a decision. He just got to the point where, like, I'm just going to throw it up and see what happens. I mean, some of the decisions, and I didn't see it, but it sounds like Aikman got on him pretty good. Was there he missed Jefferson on one side and came back and checked it down to someone
else.
Else.
Screen?
I don't remember the play.
Into like three guys was a play on which Jefferson went right and was open. And Troy did a good job. Troy did a really good job of good and bad breaking down who screwed up. But Kirk, after the pick, and this was my fear, Chipper, after the pick on which Jefferson owned up to and did not run the correct route, that's where Kirk sort of lost it. And look, he's going to throw picks. Like, if you're going to lose it when things go wrong, it's pretty damn useless then.
Well, especially as like, that one sounds like Jefferson just, he says he has to be flatter.
Got to cross Slay's face.
He went, he's got to be in front of him, not behind him. But it's like, okay, one interception on the road, like, it's going to fall apart because of that. I mean, it's like, this is why you hired O'Connell, to help him out in those situations. I mean, to get him back, on track and not let what happened, because by the end of that game, it just felt like it just felt chaotic, right? And I guess that's a good Eagles defense. I don't know. I mean, it's not the best defense probably they're going to face, is it?
No.
So it was. I mean, as much as people probably overreacted one way after the Green Bay game, this brought things back down to earth.
Right.
And I'm curious to see what the response is going to be. I really want to see what this response is going to be Sunday.
Yeah, and I guess I also want to see, because I think Kirk is going to come back and, in Kirk fashion, have a big game against the Lions. What I want to see is, the next time on the road things start to go wrong, what does O'Connell do to rein it back in quickly? Because that's really, he is a very highly paid tutor to Kirk. And so, like, when things start to go wrong, what does he do next time? Because you can't just have this happen. This part of it's not acceptable.
Well, and you can't have this happen 3 times a year where it's just, okay, well, you can't just afford to have those games. Well, it's interesting that O'Connell came out and said this is on him, right? That he didn't. I would love to know, like, what does that mean? Like, are you saying that because you didn't get Kirk back under control, because you didn't like the way you called the game? I don't think he's going to cut open a vein and tell you, connect the dots here, but it wasn't. I mean, it was a poorly coached game. I mean, I don't think there's any other way to say it, right?
No. What was your sense post game too? Shell shocked? What was the feeling post game?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I didn't because of the deadline situation. I wasn't able to get down to the locker room. But in listening to the interviews, I don't think it was shell shocked, and I don't think it was, oh my gosh, panicky or anything. I think at least for the veterans I heard, they understand it's the second game of the season. So, but it probably was a reality check that things went so damn well in that opener against the Packers team, which never happens like that, right? Where it just everything goes your way.
Right.
That they probably started to believe some of hey, our culture is different. Everything about this is different. Everything's great. So that was probably humbling in some regards that, like, you know what? Okay, it's not as easy as just saying we changed the culture and we got nice coaches and we're going to, you gotta play well too. You got to execute. So I'm sure it's a little bit of a reality check, and it's probably, I can't imagine watching that video, what their reaction was when they saw him.
Well, and what happens during it? Like, does O'Connell get mad? Does he try to explain? Does he take the blame? I'd be very curious to see what his approach is.
He mentioned today in his press conference that a number of players came up to him, or I don't know, he said some players came up and said, we got to play better too. So it's almost like he was saying, this was all my fault. Don't worry. Well, no, it's yes, it is ultimately because you're the head coach, but
right.
Irv Smith, you got to catch that ball. Like, guys, you got to, Cousins, you can't panic, all these, yes, it's coaching, but the players have to take some ownership of it too.
Absolutely. Yeah. They played a poor game, and look, going back to as well as this team, or I guess as good as this team looked in camp, Chip, when they made the moves to fire Rick and Mike, I think a lot of us, including us, said, you might want to make some significant changes, and they didn't. So there's also the problem of some of these players are the same guys that played for Mike, and that's not Mike's fault. They're just declining players. They're getting older.
And again, let's go back to that secondary. That's where I think they have a problem there. I know they drafted Scene, and we'll see how long it takes him to get in there. Booth, okay, he's injured. He probably would he have won the job over Dantzler and been, the guy?
No, but he would have replaced him in the game Monday.
Yeah.
I think, above Evans.
You've been saying it for how long? Pat Peterson didn't really get tested a lot last year because they could go elsewhere.
Yep.
Where's he at? What's his level of play? Bynum, he didn't play a lot last year. He played, but not enough to say, okay, this is the guy. This is who you're, So I think they have a real problem back there, and I think if they don't get the kind of pressure that they were able to get on Rodgers and disrupt it that way, then, and particularly we've seen how historically they've handled mobile quarterbacks. I think it's going to be a recurring theme all season with their secondary.
Observation for you on the offensive side of the ball. It looks to me, and it's 2 games, and his first game statistically actually was fine. It looks to me like Dalvin Cook is slowed down. Do you agree with that?
I don't know if I want to say that. I thought against the Packers, he, particularly that second half, there was a drive where he started getting going, and okay, this one, it just, I don't know what, obviously they fell behind, so he had to kind of abandon that, but I don't know if he's lost a step or slowed down. It just hasn't, it's just not there. It wasn't there. And I don't know if that's him, the line, the scheme, the what, O'Connell talked about trying to get him in a rhythm earlier,
Lather him up.
But it's one of these things, Judge, like, okay, you're trying to get Jefferson in a rhythm. You're trying to get the ball to him. And
right.
now I'm sure they're thinking, okay, let's get Adam Thielen involved a little bit earlier, and so it's we've said this. It's the first time head coach who's a play caller trying to figure this out, and I think it's going to be disjointed sometimes.
Yeah, on Cook, it's not that he's bad now. I feel like, and look, he's what, 27 or so?
Yeah.
So the difference that I see is this, and it's not surprising. He used to have that gear where he would put his foot in the ground and be gone.
Yeah.
I feel like that part of it so far is gone. So like he still gets decent runs at times. He can still push a pile. He certainly can get you a chunk of 10 to 15 yards. But there used to be, was it his rookie year at US Bank Stadium? And it might have been a preseason game where he put his foot in the ground and cut through just a small opening, and that guy was gone. That's where I feel like that's not there now.
Yeah, it's something I'll pay attention to. It hasn't jumped out to me that way. Like game one, I just thought, hey, the passing game in Jefferson and, Cousins is great flow there. And this one, I just felt was a, disaster from the start. Like nothing worked. It's something I'll pay attention to more because it hasn't jumped out to me that way.
Expectation Sunday, Detroit 1-1. They can score points. Defensively, they struggle. So I do expect that the Vikings can score points. What's your expectation for a bounce back in this one? I
think there will be. I think being at home will help the defense, help their pass rush. I got to imagine, I agree with you. I think Kirk will probably bounce back and play well. They just, it's puzzling though, Judd. I mean, because it was so bad the other night. That's what's puzzling. Is like, was it because it's the road? Was it because something the Eagles did? Or the Eagles that good? The whole thing. If they would have put it this way, if they would have gone there and played a tough game, close game, lost a close game, and I think I'd feel a little bit differently, or maybe even better about. But to just completely lay an egg on both sides of the ball, that's where I'm having pause. Like, what the hell was that?
Yeah. Well, and the Packers game, to go back to that game, offensively, both tackles are out. They basically are wide receiver less as far as the quarterback is concerned. Rodgers can't run now and doesn't run. So like what the Packers didn't have and what Packers do sort of fit in perfectly to what the Vikings are trying to do here. And it's like Philly was the polar opposite, right? Like everything that they did gave the Vikings problems. I was really disappointed with the word that you use because I think it's accurate. Seeming unprepared really surprised me.
Yeah. Unprepared and just unwilling to the adjustments there. I just didn't, you just didn't see them. And so, I don't know how to explain it other than, I assume they had the same type of pregame, workups and practice and film study and all that. So I'm confused I was really confused by the defense approach, Judd. I mean, that one. And then O'Connell's inability to kind of get Cousins back to center when things started to go haywire was troubling, I guess.
Exactly. All right, sir. Talk to you next week for more
All right, brother.
Access, Chip Scoggins.
We'll see you.
Take care. Bye.